Today on Empowering Workplaces, we're talking to Kori Gorman, Director of Catering and Events for Eatertainment, about the value of in-person meetings and doing business face-to-face. Welcome to Empowering Workplaces, a show for everyone who wants to make work better and more fulfilling. We are your hosts, culture designer Maddie Grant and organizational psychologist Sonia Lucina. Join us in today's awesome conversation. Kori, hello. Welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to have you on today. So the value of doing business in person, this is obviously a big topic that has undergone just so much change in the last couple of years. But before we get into it, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about your background and how you came to do the work that you're doing.
Sure, Maddie. Thanks for having me. My name again is Kori Gorman. I work for Eatertainment Special Events and Catering in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I've been in the special events industry, in particular in Toronto, for about 30 years. So very interesting topic. It's always been top of mind for everyone, but even more so now as we're resurging from coming back from something that we've never really been through before, as an industry, but also as a society. So it's been pretty interesting, and the learnings are, sometimes exactly what we expected, and sometimes not at all.
Yeah. So you told me that you've been in the industry for a long time, and you've seen a lot of change and a lot of trends and a lot of things come and go. Can you talk a little bit about, some of that history?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in the business, like I said, for about 30 years and have done everything from, large corporate events, large, incentive travel events that are happening in Toronto or outbound, weddings and, events of all natures, some of the larger events in the city, big music award festivals and things like that have all come with their learnings and have had their different audiences and different sets of challenges, which it's part of I think what brings us into this industry and keeps us here is wanting to solve the problems and make things better. But this has been a real transition for everybody. I think we're at a point in time where everybody was very comfortable getting together. It was something that sometimes was an expectation, sometimes it was just a great deep desire for that connection, and then to have it completely removed for such a dramatic period of time and for such an absolutely dramatic reason. The resurgence came with a lot of speculation from, everybody in my industry. Will people want to get together? What will the motivation be like? Will they be afraid? Will they be afraid of, the big C, or will they just not want to be around people in that same kind of social networking manner that we're very used to, designing and setting up and orchestrating for them to ensure that their potential for conversations and networking and learning together was really the best possible that it could be for a group at any given time. So here we are on the other side, and again, lots and lots of learnings. And some surprising ones. I think that everybody in my business in particular was, will people want to, like I had mentioned before. Mm-hmm. And the appetite is really dramatic. People are really inspired to get together and want to be with one another. At least in Toronto, it's been incredibly noticeable that, people are willing to make the investment. They're willing to, put the budgets together and create these environments that remind people of the advantage of being together and what they got out of being, so connected as a team. We've proven that we can do it apart. And I think the real mandate now is just reminding people that we're stronger together and that they're stronger together, right? And there's a reason that we have workplaces, and there's a reason we have work functions, and a reason that we get together to collaborate and be creative and to innovate. And I think there's a real craving for that. And then there's some, reluctance from people who got, comfortable working in a different manner through our lockdowns. But I really see a huge kind of resurgence and celebration of the places that we are, right? Instead of trying to fight it. I can say that before there was this kind of want to create something almost fantastical or something, that nobody had ever seen before. That still exists in a big way. But I will say, especially in Toronto, which is such an incredibly diverse, multicultural location, with all these neighborhoods that are so thick and rich with culture, without having to go really far away, there's been this really incredible resurgence of people wanting to celebrate that diversity, because I think that they've realized that through celebrating our neighborhoods and our diversity, you're celebrating your teams, because our teams are equally as diverse as, you know, the city that we live in. So that was a very common theme for an ask for clients years ago was, you know, tastes of Toronto, streets of Toronto, you know, or Canada coast to coast. And it kind of disappeared for a while. Like I said, there was this, you know, want to build something other than, you know,
Mhm.
where we were. And there's this real passion to go back to, you know, celebrating our diversity and in tune with, you know, the culture in the corporate office, and reminding everybody that, you know, they're all part of a team. It's been really incredible, and the statistics are very, very good. I mean, I would say from 2019, the last quarter of 2019 and the last quarter of 2022, 2022 was stronger, and 2023 is, you know, proving to be the same thing. And we've ridden through some extremely painful transitions, and
Yeah.
you know, reintroducing ourselves to the kind of volume, you know, and our vendors and our support teams and everything. But the passion and the want to do it is really still quite alive and well.
Yeah. So you've hit on a whole bunch of different themes in what you were just saying. So I want to dig into a few of them.
Sure.
The the diversity piece, I think what is so fascinating about the way that we all went remote for so long is that it opened, sort of shined a light on everybody's home, you know, where they lived
Yeah.
originally, right?
Mm-hmm.
People, the inside of people's homes, their kids, their dogs, their cats, you know, their plants, all of that kind
100%.
of stuff. And I think even though, of course, people, you know, there was an evolution in the whole remote work thing
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
well. That has also changed in a bunch of ways. But that idea that we are, you know, full human beings with families and, you know, pets and other activities, you know, that we want to kind of keep as part of our even our work environment. I think that's going to stay, right? That window
Yeah.
into your real full life, like I think that's going to stay. So I'd love to hear if you've seen some of that, or you know, just some specific examples of how you might
Yeah.
have seen some of that in some of the corporate events that you've planned.
Oh, you've hit on such a key point, Maddie. Honestly, I did say when, you know, we were in kind of the real thick of lockdown, how astonished I was noticing how deeply I was connecting with my clients in a very different way, because there were those moments of, hang on, my cat's on my keyboard, you know,
Yeah.
or you know, oh my, that was just my microwave. Don't worry, I was making tea, or whatever it is. And it was a very intimate way to, you know, build a relationship and get to know people. And I think you're
Mhm.
right. I think people have brought that because they have that level of familiarity, and they were comfortable in that way, in a way that
Yeah.
they wouldn't have been if they were inviting their coworkers to their home, for example, which
Yeah.
would never have happened, probably, or very rarely. But because it was business, and because it was what we were, you know, kind of forced to adopt, there was this, you know, okay, this is it. And that, you know, and that real kind of stripping down of the barriers. And I think that that's the beautiful part, that if we can move that into the workplace, that people will have an even stronger connection. You know, you'll have people meeting to walk their dogs at lunchtime, or like whatever the case
Mhm.
may be. But I think that there's a real, I agree, there's a real want now that that identity is out there in the universe, and it's been accepted. And you know, and people understand that there is more to the person than sitting right in front of them. I think that's actually changed the way people celebrate when they get together, and the way that they collaborate. I think it's become much deeper in a non-forced way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So is it hard to plan for that? You know, as somebody who plans events, or your teams, you know, plan events, like is it difficult to kind of get some of that sense of like organic collaboration, but on purpose?
Well, I mean, and I hate to reference, you know, stereotypes, but I guess they are what they are. The one major change in events and the way that we're designing them in order to, I would say, foster and build up these more intimate kind of scenarios, of people actually really connecting as people as well as workers. There's lounges, right? Like we've gone to, like, events have transformed from, theater style seating, very, very stuffy, to something much more comfortable, much more conversational, and much more home-like, much more
Mhm.
relaxed, where people are invited to have conversations one-on-one, where they're in a much more relaxed, and they're not asked to just necessarily sit and watch as much. I would say it's much more participatory than it has been in the past. And people are gravitating towards that. Like, you can see that there's a real impact, that people are connecting further and deeper in those kind of more relaxed environments. There's always a mandate, and there's always a message that is trying to get, for the most part, that's trying to be delivered. But I think people are finding that if they allow the space for that kind of natural and real collaboration, that the message is innate. It's almost like something they
Mhm.
don't have to, put up on a PowerPoint anymore. It's something that just, it's kind of
Yeah.
a buzzword that just works its way through regular conversation. It's been very interesting.
Have you seen a change in kind of internal corporate meetings and how they organize, how those are organized?
You're meaning my clients, not necessarily my
Your
team in
clients, yeah,
particular.
yeah.
I would say that they're doing a lot of companies have made large investments in meeting space and event space in their own facilities for obvious reasons, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it does make sense, but I do notice a lot more movement to those spaces than there might have been before, right? So, they don't necessarily collaborate in boardrooms anymore. They collaborate in lounges. They collaborate in, you know, areas that are designed for, food and beverage or a cup of coffee, that kind of thing, where it's just a different type of collaboration. It's not quite as, I don't want to say stuffy, because, everything has its purpose in the right
Yeah.
moment. But, I feel like the more welcoming you make the environment, the more you're going to get out of your teams, and the more connected your teams are going to feel to each other and to the work.
So I love what you're saying because I'm a culture consultant. So I've done a lot of work around the hybrid workplace and organizations trying to get their staff back into the office, right? And as you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, people don't want to come back necessarily. Um, until there's a good reason, right? I don't want to come back to the office if it's just to sit on Zoom in my cube when I could be
Yep.
sitting on Zoom on my sofa in my house and not have
Yep.
commuted an hour each way or whatever.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
And
so
there's large
there's
large
just a
companies who are
lot
making
of
investments. Yeah.
yeah, there's a
Sorry,
lot
Maddie,
of
continue.
rethinking of the workplace. So if the value of being in the office is collaboration, then how do you define collaboration? What does that look like for you? Is it mostly building social relationships? In which case, maybe your office needs a much bigger cafeteria, or and like eating area where lots of people can kind of gather, all at once. Or is it more about lots of pods and small groups and modular furniture that moves around, and so it's just
Mm-hmm.
I love hearing this from your side because it's
Mm-hmm.
echoing the things that I'm seeing companies who are thinking about it the right way,
Yeah.
really exploring is, and you were talking about these meeting spaces. Like, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful that companies are
Yeah.
really rethinking their office space.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of them that I'm dealing with now, they even hotel desks. You know, being a person who prefers to work from the office than home, I like my desk, but it creates this more fluid environment, right? Where, like, not everything isn't as fixed. Like, there's no one's staring at you waiting for you to punch your card at 9 o'clock and punch it out at 5 o'clock. It's much more fluid, and it's much more focused on the work, and the work becomes easier and oftentimes more effective when it's collaborative, and when it is allowed to grow organically, rather than in a predetermined structure. I have several corporate clients, actually, speaking about attracting people back to the office, um, they're investing in, like, events for holidays, right? So if it's Valentine's Day, they'll set up a pop-up, and we do cute giveaway cookies or flowers or whatever it is, right? Like, just something that
Mhm.
they don't announce in advance. Even some of them that we're doing, like a yoga and a cappuccino event for first thing in the morning. If you want to come out, they'll send out a quick invitation, and we'll set up, like a latte station, and they come in, they do yoga. So I think people are just much more encouraged to celebrate the full breadth of what their employees are, right? Some people like to do yoga. Some people like a coffee. Some people like a cookie. Some people, but they're trying to make all of those things available just to remind people that they're part of a team, and that the team that has hired them cares about them and cares about what they do. And all of the renovations that I've seen so far, there are definitely some pods, like small, private areas for people to have a conversation or network with one another. But most of the spaces are wide open, wide open, So one of my larger clients, they've taken over 3 floors of a large office tower, and they are open. All 3 spaces are open to one another. Right. And that's, I think, again, just to encourage that fluidity and that movement, through the space. So you're not as fixed, you can move if you need to move, or you can talk to Joe in accounting if that's what, helps you motivate your ideas and move something forward. So, and I think as employers, I think we're all just very, very just focused on the work. If the work is happening, the way that the work is happening is not necessarily so important.
Yeah, that is really good to hear. I know here in DC, there's a large percentage of our downtown office space that is still empty, right? People haven't come back.
Right.
And so there's a big push by the mayor to try and sort of reimagine those office buildings and, how to attract people back, basically. But you do have to, I think this is exactly how they need to be thinking about
That's fascinating.
How can people be celebrated and be collaborative and, have the opportunity to meet with people they might not bump into normally if they're sitting in a cubicle. All of those things that we've been talking about, just on a citywide scale, right? Because what you don't want, of course, and I understand this for sure, is you don't want a downtown that's dormant and none of the shops can survive because there's not enough office workers, to buy lunch. Like, that's not cool. Nobody wants that. But at the same time, it's not, in my mind, it's not about bringing it back like it used to be before. I think that's a mistake. It's like you have to sort of rethink it and imagine it for the future, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I will say, maybe it's my tenure in the industry, or maybe it's just personal experience or personal preference. There is nothing like meeting someone face to face. There is nothing like building that relationship and developing, some form of connection where you become, companions and collaborators and people who, help to work on each other's problems together. Like my business is supported by so many vendors that I could not do what I do without. And my relationship with them is tremendously essential to my success. And whenever possible, those face-to-face interactions are priceless. They're just, it's a different, more intimate way to communicate. And I think that, the more we recognize that, especially trying to apply that to the workspace, the more successful we're going to be. That's, the best ideas come out of, collaboration and, talking to people with different perspectives.
So one thing that has come up a lot in my conversations around this topic is the idea of if you're going to actually go in person to an event, to the office, to a meeting, to whatever, if it's important enough to get you, out of your house, then it has to be worth it, right? Just like I was saying, it can't be, commuting all this time just to sit in another cubicle, right? So
it's true. Very true.
From your perspective, are you seeing sort of more demand for kind of, I don't know what the adjective would be, but like what would make an event?
Incentives
or just the way they're planned and conceived in order to really encourage people to attend? Because I think there is still some reluctance, or it just has to be worth it, right?
Yeah, I understand that. I think that's and then you run into the conundrum as an employer as whose value, right? Like, so do we give like Maddie values this, and Kori, values this, and Tom values this. So whose value takes priority? What do you lean into, right? And I think the answer is a combination of everybody's, and the one that prevails, the one that you hear most commonly. So is it going to be a keynote speaker? Is it going to be a special video from somewhere else that's only being broadcast in the office? Like that's dangerous, right? Maybe people will, maybe people won't. And I do think that I have seen a couple of strategies that I don't feel were as successful as they may have been, where it was like surprise. So, if you show up, one day you show up at the office, for something that's important that you consider to have value, and there's a hot chocolate station in the lobby, right? Just for you. And trying to mix it up. So, something is happening, but the next week it's on Tuesday. Next week it's on Monday, so you never really know. So that there's that ongoing lure for something that gets old really quick.
Yeah.
Right? People are like, that isn't the value that I was looking for, right? It was cute the first few times, but now that value for me is no longer there. I can buy my own latte and my own cookie and, still be on my sofa very comfortable, right? So I think that there has to be kind of a revisit of what the priorities are and what, because we no longer have the mandate that, that's part of my job. We have to design something that is, this is why we need you here. And it has to be part of the team connection.
Yeah.
That like these people aren't able to be as successful without your help. And, to have your help, you need to be present.
Have you seen some really interesting ideas around team building specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they've evolved as much as they probably could, but I mean, I do have a lot of the same incentives, and they seem to be picking up traction. And I think part of that's the dichotomy of being at home. Because if you're at home, you're certainly not participating in a sushi making class or, doing origami or learning something different, right? Like those are things that we either do with a group of friends, which is very, very common, or it seems to be something that we do with work colleagues, right? As something a little bit different that maybe shows a little bit of a different side of yourself too. So I'd say that they're probably more in circulation than they certainly have been. And participation is higher, because I think that, doing your job from home is one thing. And I think we've all proven that can be successful to a certain degree for most people who have that ability. But you don't do an activity for yourself at home. You don't drink wine and paint at home necessarily. Those are things that,
well, maybe some
people would.
But yes, generally no.
Sounds like fun to me.
Yes.
But you don't really plan those things meticulously for yourself necessarily, right? So I think that those things have a real advantage, especially like just to refer back to the part of the conversation where we were talking about how differently we're getting to know people.
Yeah.
Because that connection is so intimate that there's a real relationship and a real bond, I think, that is made in that kind of very strange but very wonderful collaborative, personal interaction or exchange that people really want to move into being together. Oh, that was so fun, and we talked for 20 minutes about our cats. Like, let's sign up for this thing at the office, and we'll work from there on Thursday, right? So I think there's been a little bit of connection in a way that we wouldn't have been open to before.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's just a different understanding of the value of being in person. Like, it's not just about sitting around a table and having a meeting, right? Of course, there's a lot of that also. But this whole idea that just organic connections and conversations and these and ways to bring more of ourselves into the office, and different ideas for activities for getting to know each other. These are all things that existed. They all existed before, right? But I definitely think that there's just a deeper understanding of how valuable all of that stuff is for culture, for building and maintaining culture.
Absolutely. And I think that that works from both sides. Like I said, I think that, there is a craving to get together with people, be it friends or be it, coworkers, when you've been at home for a couple of weeks and, you've basically been focused on, just completing your tasks and getting your work done. But I think that that is something else that emerges, this real appetite. Like we are DNA wired to be with people. Like it just makes us,
Yeah.
it makes us human. It's what, it's what motivates us forward is, that whole emotional and cultural and, whatever connection that is between human beings. We're just wired to be social, and weaving those two things, because both of those are primal needs, right? Like we clearly need to work to support ourselves. And you
Hmm.
have that desire to want to be with other people and celebrate and collaborate and be recognized and be heard. And everybody has that, right? And being able to marry the two of them together, I think is going to be the real success that comes out of this. And I've been really inspired to see the change in culture, in particular, and engagement.
Yeah.
Engagement is crazy. There's just events and particular companies that just have it. They just have it. They just have that employee engagement and connection. It doesn't matter what they throw. If it's a random Thursday happy hour or whatever it is, their people go and they care. And that's so special and so inspiring to see, that very, very small investment
Hmm.
overall when you look at it.
Yeah.
But just that recognition, that, we appreciate you and we're here for you. It's been pretty incredible. Like the buy-in has been substantial. I'd say if I had to, I'd say for the most part, it's incredibly successful.
Well, that's awesome. I was going to ask you for a final thought
Yeah.
as we're coming up on time, but that
Oh,
I think that was perfect. Unless you have anything else you want to add, but I think that's so
no.
true. I love that so much.
Perfect. I'm glad that you do. And I was happy to chat with you. Thank you so much for thinking of me.
Yes,
Yeah,
awesome. Thank you for coming on the
wonderful.
podcast, and to all our listeners, we'll see you next time. Your culture has changed since 2020. It's time for a culture assessment. Our WorkXO assessment measures 8 culture markers that are super relevant to your ability to navigate constant change. Things like agility, transparency, collaboration, and inclusion. And it tells you whether you have the archetypal culture patterns that might be holding you back. In just a 15-minute email survey, you'll learn actionable insights to help you thrive in today's environment. Get yours today. Learn more at propelnow.io.